Hello. Welcome back to Fallout 76. Every so often I get questions about how I'm able to carry so much. At the moment I'm carrying... well, my regular carrying capacity is around 681, and I'm usually very close to it. The short answer is that partially it's because I use a lot of weight reduction perks, but I also use a lot of buffs on my carrying capacity. So let me start with the weight reduction perks. So I use Ordnance Express. Normally I don't carry that many grenades, but at the moment I'm carrying like 200 plus nuclear grenades. If you don't use missiles, if you don't use mini nukes, if you don't use grenades, then this perk is not really that worthwhile. But at the moment I am carrying a whole bunch of nuclear grenades, so yeah. This one's a bit more specific to how you play. If you use something like a 5.56 or a fixer, so you don't necessarily need to carry too much of it, and besides, most of it is very light ammo. But if you use something like a railway rifle, then that 90% weight reduction is actually amazing. I also use bare arms because I carry a lot of heavy guns. I started as a heavy gunner using power armor, but then I transitioned into a rifle person. But I always have this one active because I always carry a huge amount of heavy guns. 90% reduction is actually pretty huge. And because there's so many varieties of heavy guns, I get the biggest bang for buck out of this instead of, say, the new Rifleman perk, right? Or say melee. Heavy guns tend to be useful for pretty much any situation, so yeah. This one's very worthwhile. Traveling Pharmacy applies to chems. I carry way too many chems, which I don't really use, to be honest. I recently dropped about 40 carrying capacity worth of alcohol and dog food, so I could probably drop a whole bunch of chems. Because I'm carrying like hundreds. Whole stim packs, yeah, medics, buff out. I don't really use them, to be honest. I could probably drop hundreds and hundreds. So this perk is very useful if you're a bit of a greedy git like I am. Yeah, strong back gives you 40 more carrying capacity, which is generally not a good use of your perks. Like I said before, I'm such a greedy git that I can't help it. But like I said before, I should probably drop this and get more heavy weapons perks. Typically when I'm doing an event that involves not too much moving around, like say Scorch Queen event or Moonshine Jamboree, I'll drop this one, Bandolier and Strong Back, in favor of 6 perks worth of heavy guns. And I'll also get into power armor. So that together with a stabilized perk really multiplies the damage you can do. Okay, over under endurance, I also use Ready Cool. If you have enough rads, you should get a +5 strength. That's actually a lot more valuable than Strong Back, right? Strong Back is 3 perks for 40. This one is 1 perk for 5 strength. I also tend to use Partygirl and the Charisma, which is 3 perk points and it's a bit expensive. But when you're always on the edge of being over encumbered, being able to just boost your strength by that little bit more is actually quite effective. So with Partygirl on, a whiskey now gives you 6 strength. That's 30 extra carrying capacity. So for a couple of minutes, I can buff myself up to 711 carrying capacity. This is really good after events like Eviction Notice that give you a lot of loot, right? You can use the trick to fast travel back to White Spring Mall, but there are times when taking a quick whiskey is actually more effective. Okay, over under intelligence is batteries included, which actually makes energy weapon ammo weigh 90% less. So this one is particularly important if you use power armor, because those fusion cores actually count as energy weapon ammo, and that makes a huge difference. So let me quickly show you. If I take that off, yeah, you can see that I've gone super over encumbered, right? 400 extra immediately. Right, fusion cores are 3 each. With the perk, they're 0.3. So if you use a lot of power armor, you want to carry at least a few spare cores, right? I used to carry like 50, but then I dumped like 30 fusion cores. But yes, you can see that 23 equals 69 carrying capacity, so that's huge. It also affects, I believe, cryocells. It definitely affects plasma cartridges, and it also definitely affects 2mm Gauss ammo. Fuel as well, as you can see here. Fuel's gone up to 53. If you use any kind of energy ammo, you're very likely to want to have this one on all the time. Makes a huge difference. And now the best thing about this perk is that it goes under intelligence. And usually there aren't too many other perks that compete under intelligence, right? Although we seem to have got a couple of buffs under science to damage with energy weapons. So there is a bit of competition, but usually you can spare the 3 perk points to get batteries included without too much trouble. And that's pretty much all the weight saving perks that I use, but let me quickly show you how bad it gets if I remove them all. Oh yes, I also use Through Hiker, which also reduces the weight of food by 90%. I tend to use a lot of food buffs as well, so this is actually very useful. But again, technically speaking, I could dump it. Okay, so if I take off all the perks that reduce the weight of items, I am carrying 5,977. Yeah. There is no way you can carry that much without those perks. Anyway, I'll put them all back on. So don't underestimate how much benefit you can get from using these weight reduction perks. Seriously, they change the game. Even if you use one particular type of weapon and you tend to avoid things like explosives, or you don't carry too many chems, or you don't carry too much food, you can always benefit from weight reduction, even if it's just 1 or 2 cards. As you can see, I tend to use pretty much all of them, but that's because I'm a greedy git. That's my fault. So now we're back under our carrying capacity. So let's look at the other side of the equation. How much can you carry? Okay, so where does your strength come from, right? Firstly, it starts with the perks that you've chosen. So in my case, I've got 15. 10 naturally, and then I've also got a +5 strength for my legendaries. So I took off all my gear and I took off all my perks that buff my strength and carrying capacity. So that gives me a strength of 20. Where's that coming from? Firstly, I'm getting a strength buff from meat. I've also got herd mentality, which gives me another 3 strength. So technically speaking, that should be 23. But I also have eagle eyes and egghead, which reduce my strength, as well as bird bones. So that gives you a strength of 20 if you're part of a group and someone else also has mutations. I'm also using a fully upgraded level 50 backpack, so that gives me 120 carrying capacity. That's because of the high capacity mod, right? So if I take off everything, that gives me 326. That's including 15 strength, which is about 75 extra carrying capacity, and the Yaguai pastry, which is another 75, so together that should be 150. So that would imply that your natural carrying capacity without anything, 0 strength, would be 175. But anyway, let's just put everything on. Right, put our gear back. 586. Strong back. And ready, cool. And we have all our weight saving perks as well. That makes our carrying capacity 651. Like I said before, I normally buff it with Yaguai pastry. And the second thing I use is either Deathclaw meat, or Gulper stuffed foot, or a Stingwing fillet. The Stingwing fillet and the Deathclaw only last for about half an hour, but the Gulper foot goes for about an hour. So if you eat 1 Yaguai pastry and 1 Gulper stuffed foot, that should give you about an hour's worth of food buffs, which is long enough that you don't have to micromanage your buffs. Okay, let me give myself another Deathclaw steak. That brings my carrying capacity back up to 681, which is my normal carrying capacity. But like I said before, if you just happen to go over your encumbrance limit and you just need that small extra little buff, you can take a whiskey. That gives me 711. You can combine that with the carry weight boosters if you have some. I won't use it, but I can tell you that you can combine alcohol with the carry weight booster. Once you boil the plants that you want for gold, you pretty much have nothing else to buy other than lunchboxes or carry weight boosters. These ones I've just been collecting over time. I haven't actually spent any gold on them. And if you really need that extra carrying capacity boost, just for a minute, you can use some Red Ant lagers. They're a bit weird, but they increase your carrying capacity, it should be for a minute, but then you suffer a 50 carrying capacity penalty for another minute. I think it says 2 minutes because of the Partygirl perk that I have. And again, you can combine this with a carry weight booster. This is just for fast traveling. You want to take one of these and then fast travel immediately because you'll get the penalty straight away. So I could make that 781 for about a minute or so, because you can't actually combine Red Ant Lager with other types of alcohol. It's either this or, say, whiskey. If you don't want to use Party Girl or Party Boy, then you can use this one, which is the Vintage Maya Moonshine. You get quite a lot of them from the Moonshine Jamboree event. They don't get a buff from Party Girl, but it gives you a 4 strength bonus, which is actually the biggest default bonus without Party Girl. Anyway, I normally go around with 681 carrying capacity.